By the dawn of the fourth day, the search teams were quietly changing their strategy. They were no longer looking for a survivor. They were preparing for a recovery mission. GS Sharanya, a software engineer from Kerala, had set out on what was supposed to be a straightforward weekend hike. The landscape here is layered with bright tea plantations and well-trodden paths that give a strong, if misleading, sense of total safety. But when she veered off the main trail, she quickly became disoriented in the dense overgrowth. She reached for her phone to check the GPS, only to watch the battery indicator flash red. A second later, the screen went black. Within hours, the sun dipped below the canopy. The ambient temperature dropped sharply, and the minimal light filtering through the thick foliage vanished, reducing visibility to absolute zero. This is the modern vacuum. In an instant, the invisible tether to civilization, satellite navigation, instant communication, emergency services, is severed. As absolute darkness settles in, the surrounding auditory landscape completely changes. The dense forest of Karnataka is an active ecosystem, and nightfall brings out roaming predators and foraging wildlife directly into her immediate vicinity. The primary danger is the severe biological shock of moving from a modern, connected world into absolute wilderness isolation without a single piece of survival equipment. Over the first 48 hours, a sudden deprivation of calories triggers a strict biological rationing system. The human body begins to cannibalize its own glycogen stores, progressively slowing down non-essential functions to keep the core organs firing. Without a way to metabolize food, delaying systemic failure comes down entirely to hydration. Sharanya managed to locate a small rocky stream, drinking the untreated surface water simply to keep her kidneys functioning. Navigating the dense interior to find that water is brutally taxing. Without a machete or proper boots, every meter of progress through the claustrophobic terrain of vines and heavy brush costs massive amounts of kinetic energy. When she wasn't moving, she wedged herself beneath the wide foliage and thick tree canopies, using the natural architecture of the forest to block the wind and retain whatever body heat she could. During these initial days, survival becomes a strict physiological equation. You stay alive by balancing minimal caloric intake against minimal physical exertion, neutralizing threats only as they appear. While she conserved energy, search and rescue teams were attempting to comb through thousands of acres of the dense Karnataka forest. This diagram shows the exact mathematical improbability of their task. The search grid spans miles of complex, elevated terrain, while a single human body resting under a multi-layered canopy offers nearly zero visibility from above. By day 3, the region was hit with heavy rains. As cold water soaked through her clothes, her body was forced to burn its last energy reserves simply to stave off hypothermia. As the physical body breaks down from exposure, survival hinges on cognitive control. The mind must actively manage the very final flickers of energy to prevent a total collapse into despair. To keep the mind from collapsing under the weight of the situation, survivors often instinctively adopt a framework of micro-goals. You stop thinking about tomorrow. You focus entirely on surviving the next 10 minutes, then the next 10. When your muscles give out and your core temperature drops, enduring the elements is no longer about physical capability. It becomes an act of pure mental defiance against the passing of time. By the morning of the fourth day, Sharanya's physical capabilities had reached their absolute limit, right as the official search window was preparing to close. Then, a search team registered an acoustic anomaly. Cutting through the ambient rustling of miles of thick forest, they heard faint, repeated cries for help. When they finally reached her, she was severely dehydrated, physically exhausted, and covered in scratches from 4 days of direct exposure to the raw environment. She had survived 96 hours of rain, 0 calories, and extreme forest exposure, a duration that typically pushes the human body past the point of recovery. Sharanya's story proves that the psychological refusal to give up, sustained 1 hour at a time, remains a powerful survival mechanism when civilization fades away.